The story of Milton, Ryman, and Mary Manley really begins back in the mid-1800s when Milton's great-great-great-grandfather, Captain Tom Ryman, a riverboat captain and Nashville businessman, built the famous Ryman Auditorium. For over 30 years, it was the home of the Grand Ole Opry, and today is on the National Register of Historic Places. Simultaneously, in Dalton, Georgia, Mary's family was building jails all over the Southeast. Many of those buildings are also on the National Register of Historic Places, and Manley Jail Works is still in business today. And by the way, so is this great family.
Mary tells me that we first kissed when we were at the Lesky Clubhouse at a prom party, and I guess we were 10 years old.
No, we didn't go to the prom parties till we were 13 or 14.
Okay.
Yeah, that was very, oh, it was so funny. It was so funny. We had these proms that lasted about 10 minutes each, and it was all on a little card, and you would go with a different boy every one. Well, I remember holding hands with Milton. Milton, surely you remember this.
Yeah.
And we would walk down the street, and he walked me off the sidewalk to the side and toward the back of the clubhouse there, the Central Clubhouse. And he was grinning, he was laughing and all, and he pulled me over and kissed me, and he could hardly kiss me for laughing. And so I was laughing at him. But it was the warmest feeling, you know, it was just something new and different, and you remember.
Kissed you on the cheek.
No, you kissed me on the mouth.
I did.
You did. See, he doesn't even remember. But I remember you were laughing so hard you could hardly kiss. It was just the idea, I think, of you wanting to kiss me.
Well, I kissed other girls that same night. We were 6 years old. We lived within 4 or 5 houses of each other. And we used to play together in the afternoon. And there was a mad dog in the neighborhood, and he bit some people around. And our parents were worried about us having been exposed to the rabies.
Right.
So my first remembrance of her is going to take rabies shot when we were 6 years old.
Well, that's been so prominent in our memory that I guess I'm prone to say that too, but actually we played before that on the playground. There was an empty lot right next door to where I lived on Thornton Place, and we had a little merry-go-round in it, and a seesaw and a sandbox and all that, and the neighborhood children would gather over there in the afternoon, and I remember seeing Milton and being with him as a playmate on the playground, and I guess that's how we were thrown in the same situation with the dog. We weren't sure, but our parents thought we had been nipped by the dog, so we did end up going together. And you know, if you've ever had shots, it kind of pulls you together.
When you're 6 years old, it's scared.
Because we were always scared, and we would sometimes, I don't guess we cried, but his mother would take us one day, and my mother would take us one day, and that way we got to be real good friends.
We had to have 1 shot a day for like
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
That was hard. That was back in the 30s, though.
Did you, now this is a strange question, but at that age, did you like him?
Oh, well, you know, you're playmates. Somebody to play with, yeah.
He was fun?
Oh, sure. Well, yeah. All of our playmates were fun.
I've heard a story about when you were 14, you said something. Tell me back what you said to her when you were 14.
Oh, I told her that I would one day marry her. And I remember we were probably on a date in
We didn't date at 14.
Well, I guess we were older, 15.
Yeah.
I graduated high school at 16 because we only had 11 grades. But I remember I told her, I said, one day I will marry you. And of course, if I was 15, well, it was 5 years later when I did. In colleges, you know, in the interim.
You know what I did? I laughed. I just giggled. I laughed.
So you didn't believe him, really?
No, we weren't crazy about each other. We just did. We enjoyed swimming together. We swam together a lot, Milton. You remember that? Out at head swimming pool and all. And your mom and dad, your mom would take us to the movies and things like that. We just did things fun, but no, I wasn't serious at all back then. And you really weren't. You were just talking.
Hoping.
When did you really start dating?
Well, in high school, we,
Well, I guess double dates mostly, or afternoon dates. It was different back then. The school didn't have dances. You had prom parties where you would ask girls for a prom, and you'd walk down the street and back, and then you'd have another prom with another boy, and he did the same thing. And so we were thrown with other people, a lot of other people. And after school, I'll never forget one of the highlights of our high school was going to people's houses after school and dancing, put on the record player and dance. We'd roll up the rugs if there were rugs on the floor, and everybody would dance and have refreshments. You remember that?
yeah.
We call that dating, sorta. We'd go to the movie, and I remember you driving me home on your bicycle several times, riding me home on your bicycle.
Oh, we were young.
Yeah.
Do you remember what kind of music you were listening to, Milton, that you were dancing to?
Well, Benny Goodman, Glenn Miller,
Oh,
Tommy Dorsey.
All those.
So were you guys doing swing dance?
Oh, yeah.
Jitterbug.
Jitterbug. We're talking about the 40s now, the early 40s. I was a great dancer.
How about Milton?
Milton was good, too. We especially were good dancing jitterbug together. But I prided myself on being able to follow any guy,
She
any
could do
guy.
that.
And I could. I was just taught not to lead and just to always learn how to follow. And it was just wonderful. I remember telling my parents I'd rather eat than eat. I'd rather dance than eat.
All the good male dancers would ask Mary to dance with them because she could follow them. And she had a lot of dancing suitors.
But you and I really cut the rug on jitterbug.
We were good.
We were good in jitterbug.
Still are.
He went to Flint, Michigan. We sort of broke up there while I was at school in Atlanta. And we didn't see each other for a couple of years. And in the meantime, of course, I was dating guys from Emory and Tech and growing up, and he was meeting girls in other places. And so we just didn't try to get back together. And then one summer, we were all at home, and a friend was getting married, and a woman called and wanted us to come to a dinner party that she was having to honor this girl that was marrying and her fiance. And she asked me, said, I would like for Milton Ryman to bring you. And I said, oh. And she said, I said, well, if he will, I will, if he will. So she did the same thing to Milton. She called him, invited him to go and bring Mary Manley. And didn't you more or less say the same thing?
Yeah.
So we were thrown together after 2 or 3 years, and it immediately hit us how much we had missed and how much we had enjoyed about the other person. And we had more or less fallen in love that night. And, I guess we dated a year before you went back up to Flint to finish your school.
Yeah.
And we wrote each other regularly, and one thing led to another, and I think you proposed to me in a letter, didn't you?
No, I remember sitting in the car on a date, and Clay and Mary Jean, our very close friends, were married, or they were engaged, and I said, Mary, Clay and Mary Jean are getting married. Maybe we ought to do the same thing. You remember that?
That way. It sort of happened.
But I think what's important here is we were close. We dated. We knew each other very well through high school and through maybe the first year of college. And then we went our separate ways for 2 years. I went to General Motors Institute in Flint, Michigan, and Mary continued her education at Agnes Scott. And we just went out. She dated many other guys, and I dated many other girls. And we, more or less, you could say, played the field. And then when we finally got back together, then we compared. I compared all the other girls with Mary, and there was no comparison. And it was electric.
For both of us, I think.
When we got back together.
Mm-hmm. You know, after I knew that we were going to do this, I started thinking, my childhood passed so fast. It was such a happy childhood. I can't tell you, everything was just a family that was happy. They did things together. We went on picnics, rode with my parents. They always did things for us, and we had friends in the block that we always played with. But I just remember having a good time with my friends and my family and my church and the older people that meant a lot to me. And my mom and dad always taught me to try to do the right thing. And I grew up, this is uncanny, but I grew up wanting to do the right thing. And I didn't get in trouble of any kind, and it was just a real peaceful, happy childhood.
I grew up here on the Ryman farm in the Rock House down there on Doug Gap Road. And I had a pony. My dad bought me a pony, and he was in the automobile business, but he liked to farm. We had chickens and turkeys and guineas and cows.
We drank cow's milk.
And I grew up out here on the Ryman farm, and I was happy. Of course I was. And I used to ride my bicycle to school in the morning. I even remember riding my bicycle, speeding down Doug Gap Road to lunch, have lunch here at this house on the Doug Gap Road, and riding back to school for my lunch hour.
And it was a country road. It wasn't even paved.
No, it wasn't paved. But anyway, to answer your question, good childhood, great memories. My mother and dad were swell people, great people, good parents, just great memories, no problems, no real problems at all. Just I'd call it a very wholesome childhood.
Tell me a little bit about your dad and what he did for a living.
Okay.
And your mom. A little bit about your mom as well.
I was born in Nashville, Tennessee. My dad came to Dalton, Georgia when I was 6 years old, and that had to be in 1934 during the Depression. And he was a salesman, an automobile salesman in Nashville, Tennessee. And his brother got him a job as a sales manager of the Chevrolet dealer here in Dalton. And so he came here and took that position and stayed in that position until World War II, early 40s. And they quit manufacturing new cars. So he got in the used car business for 3 or 4 years. And I remember we'd go to New York to buy cars and drive them back, buy used cars and drive them back to Dalton to sell on the used car market. I remember my dad getting me a beginner's license. We'd ride the train to New York City and drive I remember driving a 1936 Ford back from New York City to Dalton
To sell as a used
with a
car.
learner's license. And of course, my dad, became a used car. So he was a used car dealer during the war. And then when the war was over, he got the Pontiac dealership in Dalton. That was in 46 or 7. And I graduated General Motors Institute in 48, 47 or 8, and joined him in the automobile business. In 40 and 50, we got the Cadillac franchise. Moved our business on the main Hamilton Street of Dalton. My first job was service manager in my dad's dealership for a couple of years. And in that time, I think I was service manager when we married. Then I became sales manager, and then he got out of the business. He retired, and I became the general manager. And then we built a new building down on 41 South, and he built the building. He got a general contractor and built the building down there. And today it's called Ryman Hall, owned by the Church of God.
Tell me a little bit about your mother.
Born in Humboldt, Tennessee. Married my dad in Nashville, Tennessee. She went to Ward Belmont. She had a sister and 2 brothers, a very close family in Nashville. My mother was a soft-spoken lady, loved me dearly. And of course I loved her and miss her very much. But she loved to play bridge. She loved Mary. And I miss her.
I understand. Mary, tell me a little bit about your folks.
My folks, I used to say my mother was the best person I ever knew. She was just my idol, really, growing up. And she was strict, but she was fair, and she was just fun to be with. And Daddy was always going to meetings. He was always just so proud of his children and his family. But he was a busy man, always going out at night after dinner and all. But we had lots of fun together. Mother didn't work. Back then you raised your family and made sure that everything was smooth around the house. And Daddy had the jailworks. He was with his father and his brother in mainly steel, only it was called mainly jailworks. And they built jails all over the Southeast, and we'd go with him a lot of times, just when we could. In the summer times, we'd take little jaunts to Florida and South Carolina and Tennessee and all, just to get away, I guess, as a family. And that was before air conditioning. Some of those trips were pretty hot, but they were fun to be with. And Mother and Daddy, after we married and had a family, they were great about keeping our children and letting us go off on weekends some. And Milton's mother and Daddy did too. So we were more or less, kind of free to come and go when we felt like we could. I found that after I married, I didn't work. I substitute taught. Well, I taught for 1 year when I got out of Aiden Scott until we married. And the next year I substituted when they would call me. But after that, I had 3 children in 4 years, and I was content to stay home and raise them. And I became a volunteer. Anywhere they'd call me, I'd be a volunteer. Milton used to call me, I'm married to a Miss Volunteer, but I loved it. I loved everything I did, and I guess the most meaningful work I did was to be a Girl Scout leader for about 25 years. And we raised 3 Girl Scouts, and I became a leader and camp director and stuff like that. And then I loved to work in the church. I taught Sunday school for about, 35, 40 years, off and on, all ages. And I worked at the hospital for 30 years as a volunteer. And it was the sort of thing, all of my volunteer by United Way, I was in it a lot. But all those things I did because I really did not feel coerced into any of it. I did it because I just got my satisfaction doing things like that. And I still like to volunteer. I still do a lot of volunteer work. And we tap dance. I'm with a senior tap dancing group, and we perform for nursing homes and senior groups, and we consider ourselves a volunteer agency because we try to help people bring joy into maybe some lives that are not so happy. And so we look at that like a volunteer job. But I love it more than anything.
Mary is happiest when she's doing things for other people. And she every day, she is doing something for somebody. That's when she's the happiest.
I imagine that includes the family.
Oh, indeed. Neighbors, friends, churches, charities, whatever.
I guess that's being selfish on my part because I get so much from it, that I do it because not only to help somebody, but it pleases me to help them too.
That's probably, except for when I was born and when I married, the most important thing that happened to me in my life was when I became a Christian. And that's a long story about how and why, but I had financial problems. Interest rates went up to 21. If anyone remember, interest rates was at 21.5 in December of 1980. And I was in the automobile business, and I remember paying several months at $32,000 of interest on our inventory. Anyway, I said all that to say this. I got into financial difficulty, and I, over a period of 2 or 3 years, I had to sell my dealerships, and I got out of the business. And I always felt like that God was calling me, and I felt like maybe He used that financial disaster, I'll call it, to bring me to Him. So on January the 25th, 1979, I was 50 years old. And I remember driving from here to GMAC office in Chattanooga, Tennessee, to face a $650,000 debt. And I pulled off of I-75, and I said there that if God wants me, I want Him to have me. And I gave my life to Him, and my life changed drastically when I was 50 years old. I'm 86 now. So it's been so good to me, and God has been so good to me. He gave me a beautiful wife, and she's beautiful outside and inside. Gave me a beautiful family, 3 healthy daughters, 3 fantastic sons-in-law. I'm a member of a great church, and I love everybody in it. We live in a new house we built when we were in our mid-70s at the Ryman Farm subdivision. I'm debt-free. As far as I know, I'm in good health, except for bursitis and arthritis and old age. But I'm a happy man, and I don't have any real problems. And when and if you ask about my faith, when my Maker calls me, I'm ready.
I have never had a real crisis like that because I have always felt like that I was a Christian, and I was raised that way. And I know the first thing I did after we got married, I took a Sunday school class at our church in the nursery, and then I moved up to the other things. But I have rededicated myself a lot of times to being a better Christian. And although I've never been through what Milton experienced, I feel like I'm still growing, and I hope I am.
This I know. God loves me, and He loves you, and He loves everybody. And the reason He put me and you and everybody that hears what I'm saying, the reason He put us on this earth is because He wants us to love Him. He wants people to be happy and serene and have peace of mind. That's what God wants. And He loves us first, and He wants us to be happy and serene and to love Him. And that is why I am here. And that's why I think everybody is in God's world, is because that's what He wants, is everybody to be happy and love Him. We live now in a corrupt world. I read yesterday that we're going through now a moral revolution, and I sense that. I feel that we're so helpless about what we can or cannot do about it. So I know I'm rambling, but I guess that touches on my faith and what it means to me and what I want it to mean to my family, to my generation through the years. I want them to realize that if they love God, then He'll love them back, and He'll be good to them, and He'll make them, give them, offer them, afford them a happy life. I firmly believe that.
But the way to learn what He wants of us is to read the Bible. And the Bible, fewer and fewer people are going to church. It really worries me that they don't learn what God wants of His children to do. And the only way to find out is to study the Word of God. Now that's the Christian belief, and that's what I really feel.
Milton and Mary had 3 daughters. First Marty, then 2 years apart came Mary Beth and Rebecca. Each married, and Milton and Mary now enjoy 10 grandchildren and 8 great-grandchildren. Tell me about what it's like to be a great-grandmother. What joy does that bring to you?
Oh, it's wonderful. It's just great. And the only misfortune is that I don't get to see them more. I would love to watch them as they grow up. And they're each one just so precious in their own way. It's just wonderful. In fact, you can enjoy them more, I think, when they're not your children or even your grandchildren. You worry about them doing the right things and all. But when you get to be the great-grandparent, it's just all fun, you know. You just enjoy. You realize what little miracles they are, babies are. Mm-mm.
I guess one thing, and I've said this many times, we had 3 stair-step daughters. And when they married and started having children, I remember we had, in a 4-year period, we acquired 10 grandchildren in a 4-year period. And you know, I remember one time we'd have a family gathering, we would have 6 or 8 grandchildren in diapers.
Now, Milton, I think you're exaggerating.
Well, all right, maybe not.
I think you just...
It happened so fast to have all those grandchildren in such a short period of time. It could have been 5 years. But, you know, it kind of got out of perspective. And then they weren't in Dalton. They were scattered in Gainesville, Georgia, and Atlanta, Georgia, and Saudi Arabia.
What Milton says is, and it's true, he didn't have time to spend alone with each one separately.
That's right.
Because there were so many little ones at the same time, and we seemed to all be together at the same time. And he was sorry he didn't get to watch each one separately grow up. And that's true. When they're all out of town, you don't get to see them as often. Well, it's just like a dream come true when Bo asked us to go with them, and we enjoyed every minute of it. The girls didn't play quite as well as the men did, but we enjoyed being there and being a part of it. And it is a gorgeous course. I still feel that it has really added to my life, just appreciation of the game. It's such a beautiful place.
Well, I remember it's one of the highlights, of course, of my golfing years, and I never thought that I would that I would play Augusta National. But I did, thanks to son-in-law Bo Brown, and we stayed in the Eisenhower cabin, spent the night there, played the par 3, played the 18, and Bo tells a story about how I was playing 13, and that's my favorite hole at Augusta National. And he tells a story, he embellishes it, as he always does, but he tells a story about how I'm walking down 13, hole 13 behind him, with tears in my eyes because I never thought I'd be doing that. And I didn't. And thanks to him, we were able to do it. So those are my thoughts about golfing at Augusta National.
Today, when Milton and Mary sit on the front porch, they look across the nicest subdivision in all of Dalton, the Ryman farm. In the early 1990s, Milton and others subdivided the family estate into over 60 home sites. Milton's mother always thought it would be a great idea.
They would be so proud of this subdivision and what we did with this 80 acres. And I'm thinking of her now as how proud she and my dad would both be. And we're proud. It's premier subdivision in the city of Dalton. The Ryman Farm subdivision was done right.
All underground utilities, if there was a decision to make on what cost more or what cost less, he wanted the finest, he wanted the best.
When we built the gazebo bridge across the little lake, we decided that it should have a name, and my mother's name was Martha, so we called it Martha's Bridge, and we named the road behind it Martha's Bridge Road. And I hope that she knows that.
So today, all these families call it home and enjoy the beauty of the lake, the pool, and even the old house that Milton grew up in, now used as the community clubhouse.
I always loved coming out here because we picnicked, we came out for a lot of picnics, and we even would camp, primitive camp, pitch a tent up here on the top of this mountain, Martha's Ridge Road. And we would go up there and picnic and spend the night, build a campfire, look at the stars, you remember?
Yeah.
We loved coming out here.
My dad was an avid farmer. I mean, he didn't farm for financial gain, but just for his own satisfaction. We talked about cows and pigs and goats and whatever.
And a big garden.
And his garden. But I wanted to mention, we drank the milk from the cows that pastured here on the farm, and the cows would eat bitterweed and onions, and it made the milk taste bitter. So in the spring of the year or during the summer, whatever, I'd come home from school. My dad made me go out in that pasture and pull up the bitterweed and the onions so the milk wouldn't taste like bitterweed.
And he remembers that.
Oh, yeah. I'm standing at the foot of the grave of, I call him my Confederate soldier, William F. Hopkins from Kentucky. And as I stand here, I look at the Dug Gap Mountain in front of me, and William F. Hopkins was 20 years old, and in the Battle of Dug Gap on May the 8th, 1864, he was mortally wounded on the top of that mountain, and his fellow soldiers brought him down and put him on the front porch of a Mrs. Poole who lived just a little ways up Dug Gap Road here. And he died during the night, and they needed a place, or wanted a place to bury him. And Mr. Frylock let the ladies bury the soldier where I'm standing. And the reason we memorialize this is because we're proud that he was a Confederate soldier. We're proud that he's buried now on the Ryman farm. And even his family, when we notified them or found out who his ancestors were, they came down here in a school bus, and we had a ceremony, a burial ceremony for William F. Hopkins. So we're proud that this is on the Ryman farm, and we're proud of what has been done here.
In college, when Milton came to Georgia Tech, he made good friends with this guy that was just crazy about classical music, and little by little, he taught Milton to appreciate it. So Milton, in turn, would invite me to come and listen to the music, and we'd ride around and listen to it on the radio or we didn't have cassette players back then, but we'd go to your house and we'd listen to it on the radio.
Had those 78 records?
Record players.
Yeah,
and we learned
78.
Tchaikovsky and Beethoven and Rimsky-Korsakov, and then we had, I loved Rachmaninoff and all those, and he knew a lot more about it than I did, but gradually we got really fond of going to concerts and listening to that pretty music, and it became an important part of our lives.
I have seen an evolution of technology. The first TV, I remember listening to Fibber McGee and Molly and The Shadow on the radio before television. And the first television I remember was a 10-inch screen, part of a freestanding radio in Mary's father's house, in black and white. Ed Sullivan, what was the name of that Sunday afternoon show?
Sunday night.
Sunday night, doesn't matter. But now, in this room that I'm in right now, is a TV set that's 55 inches, vivid color, stream-in movies, and as you say, the internet and cell phones. I can talk to my cell phone. I can text a message verbally to my son-in-law, my grandsons. I can speak to my cell phone, and it'll transpose my voice into the written language and send it through the internet. I guess it's the internet. But to answer the question, I have seen technology that is overwhelming in 86 years, just absolutely overwhelming. So I can't even, it is so overwhelming that I can't recall all of it, except to go from the radio and Fibber McGee and Molly to this TV set in this room right here, and cell phones and iPads. And the good Lord only knows what the future holds in that regard of technology.
Oh, well, I was so proud of the Americans being able to do that. And I don't know, I wasn't shocked. Back then you didn't get shocked, you were just grateful to see something new happen. At least I was. I just thought it was wonderful, you know, and about the great step for mankind. And it really was. And I remember John Glenn going up for the first time up into the atmosphere and coming down. That was a giant step right there. So we have watched it evolve, but you know, you take things for granted. So, you know, that's good. This is happening to the space world. What's going to happen? Eventually will planes take people up there? You never know about the moon and all, but that kind of settled down. But then when they come out with all of these iPhones, the people that you can see all the way across the world in a picture, like FaceTime and all, it's unbelievable to me. And what computers can do and what iPhones can do and iPads and all, it's mind-boggling. I have friends that don't want to know. They will not accept it because it's just so foreign from what we grew up with.
At the time that we're filming this, you guys have been married 65 years.
Right.
Mary, could you tell me, what do you think's the secret to being married? To having a happy marriage and staying married. So many people don't stay married now. So what made you guys different?
Well, you know, back when we married, there was no thought that you could ever not be married to that whoever you picked, you know. The divorce was unheard of when we married. I mean, if you got a divorce, it was in hush-hush. You didn't talk about it. Nowadays, people marry without even thinking twice about, I'm afraid, about the fact that if it doesn't work out, they should try to mend it. They just think nothing of marriage several times. I have a friend whose son has been married about 6 times. And I don't believe that when you do that, you love the person, of course, but I'm not sure you go into it thinking that it's forever, you know. I don't know.
But what about you guys? What makes you guys?
Oh, that's what I was going to say. I think it gets harder after you get older because you get more set in your ways and you believe in doing things the way you have always wanted to do them, and they think the same thing. And it's when you're young, you're very flexible and you're very giving to each other. And I think it takes work to make a marriage work. And the older you get and the longer you've been married, you have to work on it, don't you?
Amen.
It doesn't just happen.
What about that, Milton? What do you think about why you guys have been so successful in your marriage?
Well, over the years, we have enjoyed the same thing. We enjoyed dancing together. We enjoyed tennis together. We enjoyed golf together. We enjoyed water sports with our daughters together. We enjoyed camping together.
Traveling, that was our big thing in our 50s.
As an
60s.
automobile dealer, I had the opportunity to travel. We traveled all over the world, went around the world. And we still enjoy traveling. So we did so many things together is the answer to that question. And of course, now we're slowing down. Traveling is at a minimum. Tennis is gone. Golf is, I'd like to play some more. But to answer the question, we did so many things together. And raising I used to be an avid golfer, like my son-in-law Bo Brown is now. And I remember I stopped golfing. I had a 7 handicap. I stopped golfing when I was about in my early 40s and devoted several years to raising daughters. And we went camping and water sports and whatever. And when I got back into golf, my handicap went to 16. But to answer the question, what has kept us molded together through the years is doing things together. I want my descendants to know, to capsule my life, my business life. I touched on my financial disaster that brought me to become a Christian man. And I bemoan that fact, but that's the way God works. He gets you on your knees. You've heard the expression, like a little child. And you know, He used my financial situation to bring me to Him. And for the first year, I didn't understand that. I thought that was that I did that because I had problems. But again, that's the way God works. He gets you on your knees. He makes you humble. And that was 35 years ago. And after being a Christian for 35 years, it is what a trite statement it is to say a godsend, but it really has been. I want to say that in my community and in my church, I was president of the Chamber of Commerce. I was the president of Georgia Automobile Dealers. I sang in the Methodist choir for 25 years in high school and through our early marriage. I was voted Young Man of the Year here in Whitfield County. And I've had a business life that has been, in my view, successful. I've been the lay leader in my church, been on the board of steward. Mary and I have done Meals on Wheels for like 20 years. And we've had a wholesome, happy life and contributed to our community, and our community has contributed back to us tenfold. It's been majestic, and I wouldn't live it over. It's been great, and I want my heirs to know that. And so I appreciate the opportunity to bring it up.